Good morning, everyone. You will have just seen on the screen there some faces of some of our missionaries that we have sent out here from Northcross. Some of those faces may not be familiar to you because they're serving overseas, and so we don't see them here in the pews with us every week. You'll have seen Karl and Kathy Most, who are serving in Central America and Cuba and taking the gospel to people there. You saw David Buto, him and his wife Micah are working in Germany in a missional community there. The Cramptons, who we just sent off just a few weeks ago, where they are leading a church in Fiji. And another face that you might recognize a bit more, you saw me there. I'm involved in leading digital mission with Tandem Ministries. And the reason that you're seeing all of those is that we are starting a series on mission. So over the next 3 weeks, we are going to be taking a look at mission. And we're going to be taking a look at it through the grid of the values of our church here at Northcross. You know, the values of exalt, equip, and engage. And it isn't just going to be what happens up here on Sunday morning that's going to be themed around mission. We have a few other things that are set up for you as well. We have a special mission edition of the Fuse magazine, and there are plenty of copies that are out there at the back, so you can grab your copy afterwards. Maybe you can go and join that line to grab those before you grab your tea and coffee. But there'll still, I'm sure, be plenty of copies left if you go and grab your tea and coffee first. We also have highlighted a series on the Right Now Media platform. Right Now Media is a platform that our church has made available to everyone here, to all of you, that has amazing Christian content to help you grow and to help you learn. And so there's a series called Mission in Motion that we have highlighted, and we're encouraging people in our church to go through it. You could go through it in your life groups. You could go through it with your families, or you could go through it by yourself. But this is all because we think that mission is important, is integral to what the church is and what the church does. And so this morning, I'm speaking to you on the first of those series, and the slide is not moving. There we go, there it is, which is Exalting God Through Mission. Now, last week, Andrew spoke about how we are all priests, about how if we build our lives on God's cornerstone who is Jesus Christ, then we have been entrusted with a special honor, the honor of being set apart by God to be His special people in the world, assigned with the task of bringing praise and glory to God. Today I want to bring to light something very important about this priesthood that is perhaps so obvious that maybe we might fail to see it. And I want to show how it is embedded in the narrative of the whole Bible. I want you to understand what this teaches us about the character of God and who the church is. And I want us to be able to think about what this means for us today. So let me start by turning to Revelation chapter 5. This there is Revelation is a book at the end of the Bible, and it's pointing towards a picture of how God has planned for everything to end. It's a vision of what God has planned for His good ending. And in Revelation chapter 5, verses 9 to 10, it talks about a great crowd, and it says they sang a new song saying, "You are worthy to take the scroll and to open its seals, because you were slain, and with your blood you purchased for God persons from every tribe and language and people and nation. You have made them to be a kingdom and priests to serve our God, and they will reign on the earth." So this is a picture of God's kingdom in full glory. And it's important to notice in the detail that it gives us of this kingdom of priests, that they are made up of people from every tribe and language and people and nation. Now, in our multicultural world that we live in today, it can be easy to gloss over this, as when we walk down the street, we see people from many different other countries. You see people from Europe, from Africa, from India, from China, from Fiji or the Philippines walking down the street. And that's normal for us as we live in Auckland, right? To see people from all these different parts of the world. In fact, as we look around the room here, we see people from many different tribes, languages, peoples, and nations that are right here in this room. The first thing that we need to understand is that this is the highest vision of God's glory and splendor, and that it has as a key defining point that people from every tribe, from every language, from every people, and every nation are represented there. The next most important observation that we have is that for most of the history of the world and most of the history of the church, this has not even been close to the case. What I've got here is a graph that shows the distribution of Christians from the global north and the global south. And so the global north is basically Europe and North America. The global south is all the rest of the world, Africa, Asia, South America. And you can see that at the very beginning there, it's got 30 AD right there on the left-hand side, that it is 100% global south. That's because when the church started, it started off in the Middle East, which is part of the global south. But you can see there, by 100 AD, there's been a really big jump. Right? So that shows that this is spread beyond that area into Europe. But you can see after several centuries, the percentage of people in the church who are from the global south has gone right down. And that it has only been in the last century that we've seen it come up to anywhere near being represented. So we see from this that the church, when it started, was a Jewish sect comprising mainly of Jews. But it has always been God's plan to include people of every tribe, language, people, and nation. And this isn't something that first came to light in the book of Revelation. It goes right back all through the Bible. Back when God called Abraham, he said to Abraham, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you." You see that there right at the beginning in Genesis chapter 12. God is saying that all peoples on earth will be blessed through Abraham. It was God's plan right there then that all the nations of the earth would be recipients of the blessing that God had planned through Abraham. And this blessing of the people and nations outside of Israel is not an isolated occurrence. In Isaiah chapter 49, verse 6, God says that Israel is intended to be a light to the Gentiles so that my salvation may reach the ends of the earth. God intends for his salvation to reach the ends of the earth, and he points us out to Israel. This is not something that is new for the church. It is something that has been there right from the beginning. And Jesus reiterates this when he says that we are the light of the world. And that when we do our good deeds, these people around the world are intended to praise our Father in heaven. This light of the world is intended to bring people from the world to praise God. God is intended to be exalted throughout the whole earth by all peoples, and it is right through the Bible. So if it has always been God's plan that God's people would extend God's blessing to all people, people of every tribe, every language, every people, and every nation, so that all of these people may receive God's salvation and give Him praise. If that is the purpose that God has given us as a kingdom of priests, I have a few questions. First, how is this supposed to happen? How is this supposed to be accomplished? Second, how have we as God's people been doing with this? And thirdly, what is God saying to us about this today? So for the first question, how are people from every tribe, language, people, and nation supposed to be blessed by God, receive His salvation, and become the kingdom of priests that God has ordained? And the answer is simple. God sends people. Jesus sent His disciples out to preach the good news, first to the people of Israel and then to the ends of the earth. In Acts chapter 2, God's Spirit came upon the believers, and they spoke in the languages of Parthia, Media, Elam, Mesopotamia, Judea, Cappadocia, Pontus, Asia, Phrygia, Pamphylia, Egypt, Libya, Cyrene, and Rome. And I'm sure that there were other languages that they spoke in as well that didn't get recorded down. That's a long list of languages. But God's plan is for people of all languages. God started that in Acts chapter 2 at Pentecost. In Acts chapter 11, the church in Antioch makes a bold decision to take the good news of Jesus to Greeks as well as to Jews. And then as a result of that, Paul and Barnabas are sent out to take the gospel to people around what is modern-day Turkey, Cyprus, and Greece, and then eventually on to Rome. And Paul brought people with him like Timothy or Silas or Luke as they did this. And they met persecution every step of the way. But God was sending people. It started out in Acts, but it continues beyond the book of Acts, right through to the modern day. And how has the church been doing? On one level, the church has done very well with this. Here we are, about as far away as you can get from Jerusalem, and the gospel has got here. That's a good sign. But also, just about everywhere around the world, in almost every country, you will find believers. In some parts of the world, they will not be public believers because it's incredibly dangerous to be a Christian in many parts of the world. But in every country of the world, you will find people following Jesus. Going back to that graph that I showed you earlier, I'm trying to go back there. Oh, there we go. I went a bit too far. Okay. You can see there, that first century, the church did an amazing job. Starting off as a group of, at the time of Pentecost, just over 100 believers. By the time 100 AD came around, so by the time that generation died, the church had gone all the way north, up to England. It had gone all the way south, down to Ethiopia. It had gone all the way west, across to Spain and Portugal, and all the way east, all the way to India. They took that mission seriously. Since then, Christians have experienced God's call to take the good news to new places. People like Patrick, a young Englishman who was captured by raiders and held as a slave for many years until he was able to escape. And then when he went back home to England, he received God's call to take the good news of Jesus Christ to those very people who had enslaved him. And so he went over to Ireland, and he served there as a missionary for those people. If any of you thought that Patrick was Irish, well, he was Irish by adoption. They adopted him. He was English by origin. And because of the influence that Patrick had, Ireland became known as a Christian country. And it became a place that was vital in the transmitting of the scriptures throughout some of the most persecuted times of the church. Or you take someone like William Carey, who saw that the message of salvation was not just for people from a European Christian tradition, but for all people, no matter what religious tradition they came from. And he spent his life establishing missionary work in India. Or Hudson Taylor, who did similar work in China. Or the Tongan missionaries, who were the first people to take the gospel to Fiji. Did you know that almost everywhere across the Pacific, the gospel was brought to those Pacific islands first by Pacific Island missionaries? European missionaries went to Tonga, to Samoa, to Vanuatu, and they found that Pacific Island missionaries had gone there first. They took this mission seriously. In fact, still looking at that graph there, you can see in the last century, in the 20th century, that there has been an amazing increase in the number of Christians from the global south. And this is from people like the many missionaries who came from New Zealand, who took the gospel to Papua New Guinea. From the beginning of the 20th century until the end of the 20th century, the percentage of Christians in Papua New Guinea went from less than 10% to over 90%. These missionaries are not as well known as St. Patrick, but they have done equally valuable work in taking God's good news to a nation that has made a difference that is evident in the changing of that nation. But although there's been much to celebrate, there's also been failures. The involvement of many Christians in the Atlantic slave trade and subsequent enslavement of Africans in the Americas has created a barrier in many people's hearts for generations. As also have been the involvement of Christians in violence in the spread of the good news in situations such as the Crusades. Remembering that Jesus said that we are to be the light of the world, so that when people see our good deeds, they will praise our Father. The end result of activities like that has been that when people see us and hear about the God that we serve, they do not praise our Father, they curse. Because we have, as Christians, have taken the good news in a way that is not consistent with the character of our God. Character of our God who values every person as a being created in the image of God. We also have not always done a good job of being a kingdom of priests together. As Martin Luther King Jr. noted, 11 o'clock on Sunday morning is one of the most segregated hours, if not the most segregated hour in America. We have not always done a good job. We also have very significant gaps in this work of taking the good news of Jesus to all tribes, languages, peoples, and nations. For example, Papua New Guinea, I just told you about the wonderful work that has happened there over the last century. Papua New Guinea has over 800 languages, and hundreds of these languages still have no translation of the Bible. There is still work to be done. There are parts of the world where it's incredibly difficult to be a Christian, where people do not personally know any Christian because there are so few Christians in that country. There is still work to be done. And even in our country and other countries like it, the percentage of Christians in our countries has gone down over the past 100 years. A lot of churches around our nation are going grey and old and dying. We're needing to take the gospel to a new generation. And this is as much of a cross-cultural challenge as taking the gospel to a different country. All of us here have been beneficiaries of missionaries who took the good news of Jesus to our tribes, who spoke it in our language, and who brought it to our people and made disciples of our nation. Whether we have Irish heritage and can trace our gospel heritage to the missionary work of St. Patrick, or whether we have Chinese heritage and can trace our gospel heritage to the missionary work of Hudson Taylor and others who went with them, or whether, like me, you can trace your gospel heritage to someone who went on a beach mission over in the East Cape of New Zealand and took the time to explain the gospel to me. We have all been beneficiaries of people who stepped outside of their comfort zone and crossed a boundary to take the good news of Jesus Christ to people who weren't like them. All of us. Last year, as I was doing research into gamers, and as you saw in the video, I mentioned there are about 3 billion gamers in the world. So these may be gamers who are playing Fortnite, or they may be playing Call of Duty, or they may be playing Candy Crush, I guess. But there are 3 billion gamers. There you go. If you're playing Candy Crush, you're a gamer. You might not have known that. But in terms of reaching these 3 billion gamers, we found we needed to do some research just to find out who are they and how can we communicate the gospel effectively to them. So I talked to my son, who was a gamer, and not just a Candy Crush type of gamer either. And I asked him if he would be able to get some of his friends around and gather, and I would buy them lunch at Burger King. And so he got 5 of his friends to come along. And we had a conversation about their gaming, why they game, what they enjoy about it. We talked about spiritual topics, about what they think about religion and Christianity, about, if someone was to talk with them about these things, how would they like to go about that? How should these conversations happen in a way that actually fits with their culture? And it was interesting. Some of the things I found out was that for them, when they're gaming, they just want to chill and relax and have fun. The last thing that they want to have is a heavy, in-depth conversation, right? And I thought, okay. that's interesting. That helps me know if I want to talk to them, how I'm going to go about that. I realised that these gamers, it's actually just like people playing social sport, to play like touch rugby or pick up basketball or the football games that Han organises in the weekends. People play those games to have fun. And it's not supposed to be too serious. More than anything else, it's supposed to be fun. And I realised as well is that when you're playing that social sport, if you're playing with someone and as they're playing, they're a real jerk on the field or on the court. Then when you go and you have your water break afterwards, you're not interested in a single word they have to say. But if they've been the sort of person who, when they play the game, they make it more fun for everyone else, then you're all ears to what they want to say. This is a fun person. I'm interested in what they have to say about life. In the same way for these gamers, they told me that they would be willing to hear about spiritual topics with someone they trust. And I asked them, how do you know if you trusted someone? And they said, if I play a game with them and it was fun. Right? Isn't that just, you think when research is supposed to have these really eye-opening things, it's like, I could have told you that before you went and did all this research. That this is just so obvious, right? And so what they were asking for, they don't want to have these heavy, in-depth, really uptight conversations. They want people to be the sort of people that are fun to be with. They also said that they want to talk to someone who's prepared to hear what they think about things. What they're asking is to be treated with gentleness and respect, which is exactly how Peter instructed believers to act as they spoke about the hope that they had within them because of Jesus. So this is not rocket science here. This is actually really simple stuff. But one of the things that I realized after doing that was that in having those conversations with those gamers, I was entering into a tradition and a way of working that Hudson Taylor and William Carey and the missionaries to Papua New Guinea had all done. It was a work of taking the time to listen and to understand to people from a different culture, to learn how I could translate the good news of Jesus Christ in a way that they could appreciate and recognize as good news. This is missionary work. And this is key to what the church is all about. Remember that God's vision is people from every tribe and language and people and nation. This doesn't happen without that work of understanding, listening, and translating. This is key to happen. If we are to exalt God so that His name can be lifted up and He can be praised by people from every nation, then this is the work that we have to do. So as we come up to that third question now, what is God saying to us about this now? The first is that the work is not finished. There are still many people, there are many languages, there are many cultures that do not have a viable Christian presence. There is translation work for the scriptures that needs to happen. There is the work of making disciples in many nations. There is the work of training people. And there's the work of understanding different cultures, including new cultures, like gamers that are coming up. You know, this new generation is a different culture than what we have. And if you think that that translation work isn't necessary, just go and talk to your kids and ask them what a laughing face or a crying face emoji means, because it won't mean the same thing as you think it means. They use them completely differently. They have different meanings. Same sound, different meanings. It's a different language. We need to take seriously that work because it's not finished. And every generation is going to require that work of listening and understanding and translating and then communicating the gospel to that generation. So we need to be looking for opportunities to do that, to finish the work. It's not finished yet. We need to be making sure that we are reflecting who Jesus is as we do that work. That we are remembering that every person is created in the image of God and of infinite value to God. And we need to remember that this is the mission of the whole church. The role that we play in this mission may be different, but it is the mission of the whole church. This is not something that we can delegate out and say, just these people here are going to do this. We can't say this is just for David Buto and Karl and Kathy Most and the Cramptons. We can't say that. This work is for the whole church. We need to find for each of us individually where we fit in the mission of the church. Because we are a kingdom of priests. As Andrew said last week, you're a priest, and 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 all of you are priests. You are all priests. And so with that, you have a holy calling to represent God to the nations and to call people from every tribe and language and people and nation to come and join that kingdom of priests. So I have some suggestions of some different things that you can do. You could join Northcross's missions team. Maybe God is putting it on your heart to be part of the team that focuses on how our church can be facilitating mission. If you are, come and have a chat with me or Campbell or Tina or Annalie. Annalie's downstairs. That's our current members of the team. Come and talk to us. We'd love to have a chat with you about how you can be a part of that team, and we'd love for you to be able to really increase our effectiveness in how we do that. You could go on a short-term mission trip. Maybe you're thinking, is God calling me to mission? And He could be calling you to long-term mission, but maybe you're not sure. And a short-term mission is a great way to feel out that, to see, okay, is this something where God is really calling me to? Student life. I know that there are several young people here at this church who are involved in student life, sends out summer missions every year. I know that Motivate also sends out missions. Andrew Marriott, I think he's away on a mission right now, taking some people to the Philippines on a mission trip. And we'd love as a church to be able to send a mission trip using Jesus Film tools to Fiji to help the work of the Cramptons in Fiji. And so this is another way that you could be involved. Maybe you find the idea of doing this to be a little intimidating and you'd like some tools or training, I'd really like to recommend to you an app called God Tools. It is produced by our organisation, so full disclosure there, but it is a wonderful tool. Someone mentioned a few weeks back about how people used to keep a copy of a gospel tract in their wallet, and this used to be a common practice several years ago. Nowadays, people don't do that so much. But one of the things that this app is that it is a gospel tract not in your back pocket, but in your front pocket because it's on your phone. And it has over 100 languages. So it has gospel tracts in over 100 languages. So if you meet someone and they speak English and you speak English, that's great. What if they speak a different language? You then are able to help explain the gospel to them in their own language with this app for over 100 languages. It also has a great series of lessons and training from things like how to tell your own story of how Jesus changed your life, to how do you go about talking to friends and family members about these things. It has some great training there. So you can do this right now. You can pull your phone out right now, and you can go to the App Store or the Play Store, and you can download that app. And this is a great tool for you to have. Lastly, as well, some other things that you can do is, again, learn more about the history of missions that's happening. Remember the Fuse magazine that I mentioned that we've got at the back. There are some great stories there of how God is working around the world in missions. And another option, as was mentioned earlier this morning, Alpha. What a great way to bring people to come and experience Christian community at the same time as they're learning about the gospel. So these are some great opportunities that are there in front of you. And so I want to encourage every one of you, don't walk out of here today without deciding this is what I am going to do as a result of this, because I recognize that I am called to exalt God through mission. Let me pray.